America's Time. Nosso quarto episódio é um retrato dos anos 30. Você logo descobrirá por que o chamamos Tempos de Tormenta. Maio de 1932. E havia algo de muito errado na terra da fartura.
There were those of us who felt that America was teetering on the brink of revolution.
Há 3 anos, a Grande Depressão atormentava os americanos. E agora 20 mil veteranos do exército e suas famílias marchavam para Washington para saber o que o governo pretendia fazer.
They were bearded, they were ragged, they were desperate. You could see it in their eyes.
Haviam-lhes prometido bônus pelos serviços prestados na Primeira Guerra Mundial, que deveriam ser pagos após 1945. Os desesperados veteranos queriam seu dinheiro já. Foram chamados de o Exército do Bônus. No dia 28 de julho, o Exército do Bônus entrou em confronto com a polícia de Washington. Tiros foram disparados. O presidente Herbert Hoover entrincheirou-se na Casa Branca e chamou as tropas.
The soldiers have orders to burn down the unsanitary and illegal camps. And the roaring flames sound the death knell to the fantastic bonus army.
Quando a fumaça se dissipou, 2 veteranos e um soldado estavam mortos.
It was absolutely shameful. The sacrifice of the young American boys left such an impression on me, I have never forgotten it. They were just trying to feed their families.
Milhões de americanos não podiam mais sustentar suas famílias. Sem ter a quem pedir ajuda, eles estavam com raiva e chegando a um ponto insuportável. Há 3 anos imerso na depressão, o sistema americano corria perigo, a menos que mudasse e, rapidamente, poderia não sobreviver. Tempos difíceis chegaram e sem aviso. Após uma década de crescente prosperidade, quase que da noite para o dia, a quebra da Bolsa de Wall Street em 29 destruiu a confiança da América em sua economia.
What your country can do for you.
Has been shot.
These truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
This century, America's time.
I was 11 years old, but how well I remember it. It was like the skies had grown dark, thunder, and all of a sudden, faces were tragic. And people were walking around in the hallways of our building and in the streets with inquiring eyes and saying, has it happened to you? Has it happened to us? What is happening?
It was the living telegrams at that time. And pretty soon, you could feel a horror behind the door you was knocking. When you knock on a door, when the voice come out, yes, who is it, who is it? I say, I have a telegram. Well, slide it under the door, slide it under, or go away. Get away from me, get away from me.
O colapso da Bolsa de Valores de Nova York em 1929 foi apenas o sinal mais visível de uma crise econômica muito profunda. Uma crise que logo se espalhou de Wall Street para as outras ruas. Marianne Johnson vivia na Califórnia quando a Grande Depressão chegou em sua casa.
I was 11 when the crash came. My father at that time, along with a few friends, owned a small grocery store. One day he came home and he laid $2 on the table in the kitchen. And he said, no more store. Everything is gone. that was the end. For us, it was the end.
A cada dia, mais falências, mais demissões, mais gente com menos dinheiro nos bolsos. Até a US Steel, o símbolo do poder industrial da América desde o começo do século, ficou de joelhos. Em 3 anos, todos os trabalhadores fixos da folha de pagamento foram despedidos. 225 mil.
The Depression hit this country all over. It hit the farm areas, it hit the cities. You were just there, out of work and out of food. And everybody was baffled. You know, nobody had ever had that experience before.
I had been saving for maybe 5, 6 years a piggy bank, money in a piggy bank. Nickels, pennies, dimes the most. It turns out that I was the only one in the family that had any money. Because one day I came home and I grabbed hold of my piggy bank just to give it a shake, and there was nothing in it. My mother was looking at me, and she said, "Your father borrowed the money. He has to go out to look for work, and he needed money to go downtown." And he came. I didn't say anything, but my face was swollen with tears. My eyes were blinking with tears. And he me in his arms and he said, "I'm sorry. I had to have the money. But it's a loan. I'll pay it back to you." He never did. He never did.
My family had exhausted all its credit with the local merchants. And on one occasion, my father came home and asked what was for dinner that night, and my mother said, "There's nothing." How could that be? How could there be nothing? It was one of the few times in my life that I was fearful for myself.
Com medo de perder o pouco que sobrara, as pessoas correram para os bancos para retirar suas economias. Mas os bancos também estavam com pouco dinheiro. Um ano depois da quebra, 800 haviam falido. 9 milhões de contas de poupanças desapareceram.
There was a janitor called George Gallies who had $1,000 in the Bank of the United States. It had taken Gallies 40 years to save $1,000. After spending 2 nights and 2 days in the pouring rain outside this shuttered, locked bank, literally beating on the walls with his hands in frustration, he realized he was never going to see 10 cents of his money. And he went back to the basement where he lived, and he hanged himself in despair. That's what bank failures did. They crushed tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of ordinary people like George Gallies.
Sem suas economias e com o desemprego aumentando, as pessoas se viram forçadas a vender seus carros, a mobília, as alianças de casamento. Em breve, metade das hipotecas estavam atrasadas. Famílias pela América inteira se viram despejadas.
I remember my brother and I and my mother just couldn't stand to see it happen. So we left my father there to face the auctioneers. And we came home that evening and we met my father, who told us, yes, the house was sold. It was gone. And everything that we had had was no longer ours. The land was gone, the house was gone. And we had 30 days in which time to move out. And my mother sat on the side of the bed and cried. It was the first time I'd ever seen her cry. I'll never forget that moment. That's the way how our family was affected, and we were not unique.
You know what hurt me